In past videos and books, I have discussed the possibility of a master projectionist living complete other lives in other dimensions, other quite real and valid other worlds. I have said that this is possible because depending on the dimensional location, such a world might exhibit wholly different operational laws, which can mean that in that other world, time is not moving at the same rate, the same perceived intensity, and for that reason perhaps not even moving in the kind of linear direction that we are used to here in our human world. Becoming a master projectionist means that such an advanced practitioner has been able to move across the rooms of the projectionist, as described in my course book series, specifically The Way of the Projectionist, which is the second book in that series. In particular, such a practitioner, in order to truly live out intense and cohesive experiences in those other worlds, would need to be able to master the ability to enter into the third room of the projectionist, and from there engage in conscious and desired travel into quite literally, an infinite number of other worlds and possibilities that can be found there. You could say that the third room of the projectionist holds within it a near infinite, from the human perspective, number of doors, passageways, tunnels, or portals that can allow the practitioner to travel across space and time, in ways that completely defy current rational understanding. By becoming a competent projectionist that can proficiently operate in the third room, this advanced practitioner can perform the greatest feat available to a projectionist, which is the ability to truly begin to break free from the constraints of this average human world. Inner alchemists perceive in a direct energetic manner, which by the way is something that could be called seeing, that this world is a bounded space, it is a place surrounded by walls, no matter which direction you look. Moreover, this world, like all worlds, has a relative gravity, but compared to many other worlds available, the gravity of this world is massive, and it is the case that escaping that gravity is like escaping a trap, a giant cube that imposes many constraints on all individuals. Such constraints are not only physical, that is, they are not just the constraints of physical perception, they are also psychological, meaning that there is this general inner heaviness that inclines us to almost instinctively seek the comfort of dogmatic beliefs, limiting psychological rooms, that might make us feel a little safer but that really make that already small physical cube even smaller still. So, becoming a master projectionist is all about breaking past the bounding walls of this cube we call the only real world, and entering wholly new other possibilities, that slowly but surely begin to increase the worlds available, and the options available to an inner alchemist. Once a master projectionist has become quite adept at manipulating in the third room, they are, in their battle against the gravity of this human world, able to find new worlds, new passageways beyond the walls that hamper individual freedom in this dimension. And such a freedom can be so diverse in scope, so different from the supposedly physical and supposedly only real world that they have left behind, that even the most creative human fiction pales in the face of the true reality of all that is available for them to perceive out there. The doors to be found in that room can lead in all sorts of different directions, with some of these other places, other worlds, having varying limitations and potentials that are directly proportional to the energy level of the projectionist, and the dimensional laws inherent there. What this eventually means is that, as a projectionist grows in power, they can begin to access other worlds that are incredibly different yet cohesive and so large in scope, that they can be said to be complete open worlds that such intrepid explorers can explore at their own leisure. Now, these other places can, as I have said, have varying configurations, that may mean that such other places may have different laws of space and time. As such, some of these doors may lead to other places where time can flow differently, certainly may be perceived differently, and due to all of these new and alien factors, time from the perceptual sense of the projectionist may not be apprehensible at all in the way that time is perceived in the human world. For example, there may be other worlds where time is actually felt, not experienced as an only physical phenomenon that can be measured through causality. It is even possible to experience time in other dimensions as pain or pleasure, where time may be experienced as a liquid or a light, or most likely, in many of these worlds that are accessible to human beings, time will be experienced, just like in this world, like a linear causal motion. But such causal motion will happen at a faster or slower rate than in this world, meaning that time can flow faster or slower in other dimensions. I hope you have noticed that I have stressed the notion of the need for the practitioner to be a master or that is powerful projectionist. I have done this because it is my duty, it is most logical, only logical, for me to point out that getting to this point as a projectionist that can access such other places requires strong focus, and it does not happen instantly. For most people, such adeptness may take many years of effort, by which I mean relentless focus. It is not an overnight thing. This ability to participate in other open worlds is not an instant endeavor. But to help as much as I can in the easing of this, I have revealed the techniques needed and have laid out the inner alchemist way of the projectionist in the books mentioned. I have described the levels, the rooms, and direction of such proficiency, finally by saying that to skillfully access such endless worlds and potential, the inner alchemist would need to attain the ability to work expertly in the third room of the projectionist, which is no small feat. In other words, while it is possible for a naturally talented person to become this adept quickly, in general a projectionist must work quite hard to get to this point, to the point where they can relatively easily find and traverse these other worlds. Such progress usually demands intense focus and dedication towards the proficiency of certain techniques as described in the course books mentioned, and this really means strong focus, and the ability to get up over and over again in the face of what seems to be failure, but what is instead tentative steps by a being that is beginning to crawl and eventually walk, and move away from the general cage that traps most of humanity. Once a projectionist attains this kind of mastery, after much individual and conscious focus and inner motion, they may just find themselves in another world that may even very much resemble the human world that they have left behind for a time as they project. But this new other world that they have projected to, after accessing and finding a portal in the third room, may be like a new land, a strange new land with similar physics but a different history, a different society, and even slightly different operational laws to some degree. For example, it may seem just like this human physical world, but in that other dream-like world, the projectionist may find themselves in an unknown country, where the family and all the responsibilities of the average waking world do not exist at all, and there, they may begin totally new lives, with a new family, with new responsibilities or new challenges, that may be far different from what they may know in their first life, the first human world. Such a master may even find other worlds where the differences are such that this new dream world, as it were, this other world, is like some kind of odd fiction, being that in that totally alien other world they may begin lives as warriors, wizards, explorers of vast sea or endless galaxies, as spacefarers. Think of such worlds as wholly real, completely valid, and stable other existences, where projectionists might, if they can master the ability to find stable doorways, begin long, sequential, and epic adventures in lands that are completely real but also alien, in that they seem to be not the human world at all, historically or physically. And yet these other alien worlds may seem cohesive and familiar somehow, in that within them such travelers are able to fulfill some or perhaps all of the personal desires that they may have ever had, no matter how fringe or outlandish such desires may be. And this is the great allure of the third room of the projectionist. And as to how this happens, how this operationally takes place from what could be called the average human world, is that such individuals will be living multiple existences, and experiencing an ever-growing intensity of life experience that will not take up any space in the physical dimension per se, at least not at the same rate at times, meaning that to the average world they will seem to not be doing anything much at all. An individual might live a regular life in the average world. They may have a family, they may have a husband or a wife, a regular job, but in another place, a new dimensional place that they can access because they have become master projectionists and have been able to find and maintain a stable door in that third room. They may have another family, another husband or wife, another career or adventure, and in that sense they will have two simultaneous lives, two lives happening at once, and to them, in time, the reality of one life or the other will be inconsequential, in that to them both lives will be just as real, and each will offer flavors of experience that will make each worth living and quite special, quite valid. And due to the fact that this individual is in essence living two lives, their age, the sum of their experience and the intensity of their being, will be perhaps even exponentially greater to an ever-growing degree, than anything experienced by a person that is only able to access the human dimension, to a person that is essentially trapped within the walls of the human three-dimensional cube. Having access to that other world then, such a projectionist can experience that other intensity in different ways, the time of that other world in different ways. In this short video I will stick to the more polar distinctions of how such experiences might happen from the physical perspective for brevity's sake. So, to the average human physical senses then, this individual will seem to meditate, or perhaps dream. That is, to the average world such an epic dreamer will be just that, a dreamer, a layabout as it were, a person that seems to be doing nothing physical and therefore doing nothing quote-unquote real to most of humanity. To average bound people, who are quite simply trapped in one world, the intensity and the inner doings of the dreamer are seldom suspected, aside from perhaps the ability of such dreamers to do or act in what to the average will seem like irrational ways, and such irrational actions and odd experience will be turned rational, will be rationalized in other words by the average human world, and then be ignored. Generally, the doings of such projectionists will not be suspected at all, aside from those that may meet such individuals personally, and who may note that such odd people seem to exude an odd aura, an inner complexity and perhaps weird darkness or void, that may induce in the other a cold and odd chill, a terrifying kind of gravity that pulls at the average person, with a kind of impossible to define melancholy or dread. So, unless such dreamers speak, write, draw, act, sculpt, or describe in whatever artistic fashion some of the complex nature of such travels and such other life, no average person would ever really suspect the magnitude of that ever-growing intensity within the dreamer. But to stay on point and within the context of this video, such a dreamer would either live two seemingly standard separate lives as mentioned earlier, where they are awake in one, the one average people can perceive as real, and asleep or meditative as they enter another life, that to the average person of this world would be just sleep, or a kind of catatonia. But to the dreamer, the projectionist, there would be two full lives, one during physical waking time and one during dream waking time, and for them there would then be two intensity generating points, two adventures. For them such adventures could both have similar linear order, meaning that the dream life and the physical world life progress side by side in about the same sequential speed, or one life could be very fast, where they experience seeming decades in it, while in the other life only hours may have passed. In ideal circumstances from the point of view of an earthbound projectionist, the non-physical life will be the more intense one, and as such this projectionist will live out relatively huge experience, huge intensity, in other alien worlds that only take minutes or hours of physical earth time. This means that such a person will not age physically, their bodies will not age any faster than any other person on earth, but their intellect, their inner essence, the intensity and complexity of them, that will grow and expand in ways that are impossible to define or identify with the physical senses and the standard laws used to judge and measure this world. Once an inner alchemist, as a projectionist, becomes unbound by linear physical time in this way, which as I have said is the real goal of being a projectionist, the possibilities for such an individual start to become endless. If you would like to know more about the way of the projectionist and the breaking of the walls of the three-dimensional cube in general, then I recommend this course book trilogy, or as an adjunct to the material discussed in this video, the book, Out-of-Body Experiences, Quickly and Naturally. I will leave a link to these in the video description below.